Hey, this is Andrew, and I am back to bring you another Keyforge set review, walking through all the Brobnar cards from Age of Ascension. We're mostly done with this set. We have Brobnar and then Dees to go through, and I took a break after going to Gen Con. Just been kind of slammed and exhausted, so finally starting to catch up here. Plus, I'm motivated because I decided I should probably get this done before I start working my way through these. So there we are. Yeah, so let's get into it, and we'll start with the questions that I always like to ask when looking at a house in a set. And the first question is, when I see Brobnar on the deck, what am I hoping to get out of the deck? And the answer is I'm hoping to get some creatures that want to fight, maybe some cards that will accelerate my ability to fight, with the ultimate goal of gaining and being able to exploit board control. I'm possibly looking for some big creatures. I'm looking for creatures that do damage, or some cards that do direct damage, maybe some creatures that also do direct damage. I'm looking for some amber destruction, probably not a lot of steal or capture, but a lot of amber destruction, hopefully. Maybe there are some of the steal and capture effects do happen, but your opponent loses amber is a more common thing in Brobnar. And I'm maybe looking for some amber ramp, just depending on the situation, but it's going to tend to be fight based, either in the form of things that reward me for fighting or things that allow me to get board control and then have like ready and fight. But if there's nothing to fight, then I can reap. Okay. What do I hope to see next to it? I really like when I have a Brobnar deck in Age of Ascension and I see Dees next to it. They tend to work well together. Dees has some ways to control the things that Brobnar doesn't necessarily, and also, if you can establish strong board control, Dees has some cool things they can do to be mean to your opponent, but it helps if you can establish that board control. The obvious chase combo for Brobnar in AOA is Drummernaut and Ganger Chieftain, and if you're not aware of that combo, the way it works is that when Ganger Chieftain comes into play, it lets you ready and fight with a neighboring creature. If the neighboring creature is Drummernaut, then Drummernaut becomes ready and fights. If your creature if your opponent has no creatures on the board, then it doesn't fight. So you can then reap with the Drummernaut, and Drummernaut's reap effect, will play fight and reap effect, is to return another friendly giant to your hand. So you then return the Ganger Chieftain to your hand. You play the Ganger Chieftain out again, readies the Drummernaut, and then you can do this ad nauseum, although it's limited by the rule of 6. It's important in a situation like this to remember the rule of 6 applies based on card name, not physical card. So if you have multiple copies of Drummernaut or Ganger Chieftain, they don't count separately. They count toward the 6 together, and it's also, some people forget that play counts towards the rule of 6 as well. So you play and then you reap 5 times. That's 6. Yeah, so it's a great combo. A lot of times, I've noticed a lot of times people aren't sure what to do with the Ganger Chieftain at the end, and there's a couple of optimizations that you can make. One is if you are going to play the Ganger Chieftain for the 6th time next to the Drummernaut, you might as well just play it next to another Brobnar creature to have that creature ready and then reap with that creature. That way you leave the Ganger Chieftain on the board, and you don't have to get it stuck in your hand. Otherwise, if you reap with the Drummernaut that 6th time and you return the Ganger Chieftain to your hand, sometimes the answer is to return a different giant to your hand, but it just depends on the situation. Anyway, if you've played the Ganger Chieftain 6 times and you return it to your hand, you won't be able to play it out again. So just something you have to be aware of. Okay. So what else? What would I like to see as a Maverick? Grey Rider. Grey Rider is just so good with Brobnar because it really plays into that board control stuff. And the Sanctum is generally good with Brobnar for that reason. They work well together. And then lastly, what would I like to see as a legacy card? And that is, I will show you, haha, Khalifi Dragon. I just love Khalifi Dragon, so I'm a sucker for this. I think there's actually a little better in-house ramping for Brobnar, so they would actually have a better chance of getting Khalifi Dragon out in AOA than they did in Call of the Archons. But I was also thinking, I wonder, like, I hadn't thought of this before, but Khalifi Dragon, I mean, it doesn't say Saurian, but it looks so much like it should be in Saurian. I wonder if, I don't know, I wonder if we'll someday get some lore around this, like, and I wonder if, like, the 7 or more requirement is like, oh yeah, like, we have to have enough money to pay off the Saurians to let us borrow their dragon. I don't know. There doesn't have to be, I mean, dragons don't necessarily have to be dinosaurs, but I wonder, and now I'm thinking, oh, I see the chains on it. I wonder if they're renting out the dragon from the Saurians or something. Anyway, cool. It's just a great card, though. It's a great card, and I wonder what the story is that's going on there, especially now that, I just think, like, hey, this thing's buds are dinosaurs, not giants. So, anyway. All right. So let's get into it, and let's start off. We'll go through, like we always do, commons, then uncommons, and then finally rares. And so we'll start with 1-2 punch. 1-2 punch is an action that gives you a bonus amber, and after you play it, you stun an enemy creature. But if the creature was already stunned, you destroy it instead. That's good. Tremor, if you get Tremor, if you get 2 of these, then you can have an already stunned creature from your Brobnar stuff that you destroy this way. Obviously, they're stunned in other houses. Well, actually, I was surprised. Early on in AOA, I thought the whole reap and get stunned thing was I thought we were gonna have creatures constantly stunned. And it turns out we tend to kill those creatures that would stun our stuff. I guess I suspected more things would be stunned, but this would pair well with a situation where your opponent is reaping into something that stuns it. Maybe you have an Orb of Invidious or something that they can't get around as easily as killing a creature. Anyway, cool card. Bonus Amber, I'm never sad to see this. And even if you just get the bonus Amber and the stun, a stun is such a nice effect. Alright. Bingo Bang Bang. Bingo Bang Bang is fun, is great. I don't see it enough in decks. Like, I would love to see more Bingo Bang Bang in decks. It's low power, it's only 2 power. It's a goblin. But before it fights, you deal 5 damage to each neighbor of the creature it fights. That's super cool. It's great for, that's 5 direct damage. It's great for dealing with stuff with elusive. If your opponent has a creature with elusive, you can punish them by throwing Bang Bang into the creature with elusive. That way you're doing 5 damage to that creature's neighbors, but Bingo Bang Bang doesn't actually take damage. Neither does the creature it directly attacks. And especially you want this in a deck with effects that let you ready and fight, because it's low power, it might not survive until the next turn where you could use it. But yeah, it's so great. All right. And we'll come back. I'll mention Bingo Bang Bang again later, because there's a reverse of it that you're probably aware of. Bramo is a 4-power giant and knight with 1 armor. It's interesting, in Call of the Archons, Brobnar also had 1 knight, which was Hebe the Huge. And in AOA they have Bramo. So it's 1 armor, and when you play Bramo, you deal 2 damage to each enemy flank creature. Underrated combo, this with Drummerknot, because you can play Bramo, deal those 2 damage to enemy flank creatures, play or reap with your Drummerknot, return the Bramo to your hand, and play it again, dealing 2 damage to their flank creatures again. So he can just come back up and down, I guess taking those trees and hitting over and over again with Drummerknot. So that can be a pretty cool combo. Obviously doesn't have the Amber generation potential of Ganger Chieftain Drummerknot, but yeah, Drummerknot Bramo is great. Okay. And a 4 power, 1 armor creature, not bad. Coward's End is back from Call of the Archons. It's one of my least favorite Brobnar cards. I feel like it's almost never worth it. There are occasions once in a while where it is the right thing to do, but it's almost never worth it. Coward's End, it's an action, and when you play it, you destroy each undamaged creature. The kind of thematic element here is Brobnar tends to be fighting and getting damaged, so of course the Coward's End is probably going to kill more non-Brobnar creatures. And then you gain 3 chains. But again, if you have a strong Brobnar deck, you're just wiping the board, so you don't need this. And I feel like it's so often just discarded. So I don't love it. Once in a while it's clutch, and then you're glad you have it. Alright, so Caffeine A is the opposite of Bingo Bang Bang. Caffeine A is a 5 power giant that before fight deals 2 damage to each creature of the neighbor it fights. That's still a good effect, and I think I would be thrilled about it if there wasn't a Bingo Bang Bang, which is 5 damage to the neighbors, So I don't get excited about Caffeine A, I think, because I'm comparing it to Bingo Bang Bang. Yeah, and I mean, it's fine. It's a fine 5 power creature. I just doing 2 damage to neighbors is not as cool. And then we have the fabled Drummerknot. It's amazing this is a common. Yeah, it's just amazing. It's a 6 power, so it's big. It's a 6 power giant. The 6 power is really critical because what it means that you're pretty likely, if you can drop this, if your opponent only has 1 creature and you have this and a Ganger Chieftain in your hand, it's very, very likely that you will be able to kill that creature with the Drummerknot and have the Drummerknot live and continue moving along with the combo. So the fact that 6 power is pretty important makes it very, very good. So it is a 6 power giant, and when it's played, or after it's played, after it fights, and after it reaps, you return a friendly giant creature to your hand. That's actually been errated. It should say return another friendly giant creature to your hand. And that's because if it didn't say another, then it would bounce itself and you would not be able to play it from your hand unless you had another giant. So it does not bounce itself. If you have 2 Drummerknots, it's possible to, you have 1 on the board, it has some damage, you play the second Drummerknot and you bounce the first one, get the damage off of it. Okay, next up we have First Blood, which is an action with alpha, so you can only play it before doing anything else on that step. It has to be the first thing you do before you play or use other cards. Gives you a bonus amber, and after you play it, you deal 2 damage for each friendly Brobnar creature, and you can divide this damage among any number of creatures. Maybe not obvious is that when it says you can divide the damage, it's like the total damage, right? So let's say at 4 Brobnar creatures, you're going to do 8 damage. Well, if you want to do 3 damage to one creature, 2 damage to another, 2 damage to another, and 1 damage to a fourth, you can divide it up that way. It's not like Mothership support where you're dividing up you're dealing instances of 2 damage per instance. This is you're dealing all the damage and you total it up and then you can divide it however you want. It doesn't say to enemy creatures, so you can do this to your own creatures. I very often end up not, well, I just always draw this early when I don't have Brobnar creatures on the board yet. So I haven't got a lot of value out of First Blood. It gets you the amber and that's about it. So I don't get excited about it. I'm sure there are decks out there that do make good use of it. It just hasn't really been a power card very often in my experience. Next up we have Fuzzle, which is a 5-power giant that after reaping says if an enemy creature has been destroyed this turn, gain 1 amber. That's fine. You know, it's if it happens, if it triggers, then it's like Dew Fairy, right? It's great. It's great amber generation. But the situations where that works out, I don't know. It's always kind of iffy. Yeah, but it's bigger, so it's more likely to stay on the board. You just have to make sure it's in a deck where you can get creatures out and fighting, and then reap with the Fuzzle. And then we have Ganger Chieftain, which is also back from Coda, 5-power giant. After you play it, you may ready and fight with a neighboring creature. Really nice card. And you know, it's great with Drummernaut, but even without Drummernaut, it's still a great card. Gauntlet of Command, also back. It's an artifact that can exhaust to let you ready and fight with a friendly creature. Very nice. Groggins, 8-power giant. When Groggins is used to fight, it can only attack flank creatures. This is strictly worse than Troll, but I think still good. Yeah, it's big, but it can only fight flank creatures. I've ended up in some weird situations where, because an opponent was relying on Groggins, I could pull off some tricks by just having my flanks cushioned enough to protect the creatures I cared about. Then we have Groke, which is the opposite of Headhunter. Groke is a 5-power giant that, after fighting, makes your opponent lose 1 amber. It has to survive the fight for that to trigger, but yeah, it's a fun card. And the nice thing about this compared to Crump, so Crump is a 6-power, but Crump had to actually destroy the enemy creature for this to trigger. Groke, it triggers even like when it fights an elusive creature. To burn the elusive, your opponent will still lose an amber. Then we have, we have 4 more. We have Into the Fray, which is an action that says for the remainder of the turn, a friendly Brobnar creature gains fight, ready this creature. So you pick one of your Brobnar creatures, it gains fight, ready this creature till the end of the turn. This is really nice. For it to be really nice, you want to either there are a few situations where it could be really good. One is if you have a creature that is just really big and is going to survive several fights. One is if your opponent has a lot of elusive creatures, because that way you can burn the elusive without your creature getting hurt. And the third way is if you have some sort of effect, like let's say a potion of a vulnerability, that will keep your creature from being damaged, so you can just use it over and over again without it taking damage. If you have those situations, you might run into the rule of 6, right, where you're only going to be able to fight 6 times, but that's a good deal. Then we have Lull of the Titanic, who's an 11-power giant location that deals no damage when attacked. So when Lullet fights, it does damage. When it's attacked, it does not deal damage. Pound is an action that gains you a bonus amber, deals 2 damage to a creature with 1 splash. This is a pretty clear replacement for Punch. Instead of doing 3 damage, it's 2 damage with 1 splash. I love it. 2 damage takes care of a lot of things that I want it to take care of. And then I don't mind getting that 1 splash. I think maybe the worst situation is if your opponent has like an Avond or something like that that's giving armor, so that maybe that 1 splash isn't as effective. But, well, I guess overall the whole thing's not as effective in that case. But generally speaking, it's a really nice effect. Then we have Tremor, back from Coda. It's an action that stuns a creature and each of its neighbors. Very nice. Alright, here we are, we're into the uncommons. And we start with an oldie but a goodie. Blood Money. It's back from Coda. It's an action that says place 2 amber from the common supply on an enemy creature. So it's as though they had captured that amber from you, but it's gained from the common supply rather than from your pool. Very nice effect. Once you kill that creature, you gain that 2 amber. Blood of Titans is an upgrade with 1 bonus amber that gives a creature +5 power. Very nice. Really like to use it on like a Grok or something. Notable, if you put this on a Lollop, you're at 16 power, which is pretty high. That matters when we come up later on. We'll come to the Flex, which is a card that I think has underperformed what some people thought it might, but we'll talk about that later. Anyway, but you can make a 16 power Lollop this way. Makes your Grok 10 power, which is fantastic. A lot of other cards similarly makes them big. Sometimes one of the things you should consider is if you have like a low power elusive creature with a powerful effect, throwing, like, let's say a Dusk Witch, throwing this on it might be a really good idea, because now you have a 6 power elusive creature that makes all your creatures come into play ready. So sometimes it's not about boosting the power, doubling the power of a really big creature, but like, really jacking up the power of a smaller creature. It just depends on your situation, but that can be a really nice effect. Burn the Stockpile is back. It is an action that says if your opponent has 7 or more amber, they lose 4. Really, really strong effect. Very nice card. Kolf the Quiet is a 6 power giant with elusive. That's it. That's all he is. Just lounging there in the sunflowers. Flamethrower is an artifact, pretty clear replacement for cannon. It can exhaust to deal 1 damage to a creature with 1 splash. Flamewake Shaman is a 4 power human that on play deals 2 damage to a creature. It's such a bummer that this isn't a giant, because it would work better with Drummernaut if it were. Not a lot of humans in Brobnar, by the way, but Flamewake Shaman is there and doing a little damage here and there. Gargante's Scrapper is a 3 power giant with alpha, so you can only play it before doing anything else. And when you play it, if you have 3 or more amber, you deal 3 damage to an enemy creature. It's okay. I'm never like super excited to see this, because if that doesn't trigger, it's just a 3 power creature. Yeah, I don't love it, but again, if you're in a situation where you can trigger that, it's a very nice effect. It's just, how often does that work out? Grunt Buggy is an artifact with a bonus amber, and it makes your opponent's keys cost +1 amber for each friendly creature with power 5 or higher, and it makes your keys cost +1 amber for each enemy creature with power 5 or higher. And I think this is one of the most important cards for Brobnar in this set. To the extent that, I mean, in the future, if I talk about like cards that I'll want as a legacy, Grunt Buggy is almost certainly going to be high on that list, because it changes the game so much. It's not like this was a totally, unknown effect in Coda. You had like Iron Obelisk, which made your opponent's keys cost +1 for each. Is it damaged Brobnar creature or just damaged creature? I think it's damaged Brobnar creature, but don't quote me. So that could do some, but it was never like a super important card. And Pile of Skulls is interesting too, because it, if it's out, then when you destroy stuff, you capture. So there are some things in Brobnar in Coda that could turn creature control or board control into amber control and key control. But Grunt Buggy just is so good at it. It really does change the dynamics of the game. I would love to have. So I have a deck with strong Brobnar creatures and Grunt Buggy, and I just wish I had 2. because I wish it came out more consistently, because it's if it comes out early, it's good. So for Grunt Buggy to do well, it's best if you have good support for it in the other houses. And my best Grunt Buggy deck has several creatures in both the other houses as well that work well with Grunt Buggy. So it has great support, and it just, like I said, changes the dynamics. Games where it comes out early, I'm much likelier to win than games that it comes out late. So I just, this is a really powerful card, and it works well with Brobnar. I mean, it's just so good in Brobnar. You wouldn't put it anywhere else, but I think this is one of the pieces that Brobnar needed to turn into a competitive house. Okay, I'm gushing. Anyway, yeah, and it gives you an amber too, so not bad. It can backfire, but you know, you just have to know what you're playing and have a deck that's going to use it well. All right. Speaking of cards that can backfire, we have Little Rapskull. It's a 2-power goblin with elusive, and it says that creatures must fight when used, if able. It's important that it says must fight when used, because that means you can choose not to use a creature, and then you don't have to fight with it. But if this is on the board, you can't reap with your creatures unless your opponent has no creatures on the board. So you really have to be careful when you deploy this. One way to deal with it, if you plop it down on your turn, then your opponent can either deal with it, in which case they're going to probably have to fight it twice, or maybe they have some direct damage, but they probably have to fight it twice, which is kind of a waste for them, and then they can go back to reaping. But on your turn, if you go Brobnar anyway, you can choose to just fight the Rapskull into something and kill it right away. So if that's the right choice. So just you have to be aware of it, and it can definitely mess up your plans. Pogo is a 6-power giant that, after it attacks and destroys a creature, you may deal 2 damage to a creature. It's a may, so you don't have to, but that's a very nice effect. Yeah, and this is one. AOA struggles a bit with dealing with Brend, where you want to kill your own Brend so you can steal 3, because so much of the direct damage effects in AOA specify enemy creature. Pogo is nice because it doesn't. So if you have an Pogo on the board and a Brend, you can get at least 2 damage toward the 3 you need to kill your Brend by fighting Pogo into your something on your opponent's side, and then deal the 2 to Brend. If that's, sometimes that wouldn't be the right thing to do, but sometimes it is. Yeah, I like it. It also helps deal with the pesky little 2-power elusive shenanigans. And then we have one of my just favorite Brobnar cards overall that is back from Coda, Relentless Assault. It's an action. When you play it, you ready and fight with up to 3 different friendly creatures one at a time. Because it's an uncommon, I occasionally run into situations where people haven't seen it before or haven't seen it in a while, and they'll look and go, oh, it lets you do what? Because ready and fight with up to 3 creatures is really good. Of course, they don't have to be Brobnar creatures either. So if you need to use your Restnar to control an artifact or something like that, Relentless Assault lets you do that. It's great. All right. Screech Bomb, also back. It's an artifact. It's a weapon. It has Omni. You sacrifice it, and your opponent loses 2 amber. When do you burn this? I tend to just do it as soon as my opponent has 2. I guess the exception would be if I was playing this in a deck where I also had some shadow stuff where I wanted them to be over 6. Maybe I would wait until they're over 6 and then play Ronnie and then Screech Bomb. But unless I have some very specific reason, it's just well, if I can make them lose 2, I just might as well. I guess the other situation would be if they have bait and switch and you're worried about them. You want them to be close to you in number, but I just don't like to deal with having to worry if they have something like a poltergeist where they can turn it against me, or they can destroy it, anything like that. I'd rather just use it as soon as possible in most situations. All right, Smith, also back. It's an action, has a bonus amber, and it gives you 2 more amber if you control more creatures than your opponent. If you get Brobnar, there's a good chance you do, and this turns this into the equivalent of Virtuous Works, which is really good. Sound the Horns, also back. It's an action, it gives you a bonus amber. You discard cards from the top of your deck, so you start flipping them over until you hit a Brobnar creature. If you do hit a Brobnar creature, you stop, you put that creature in your hand. You can play it or whatever you want. If you run out of cards, that's it. You don't flip over and keep going. The Flex. So this card, I think I was really excited about early on. I don't even know if I've got a deck with it, maybe one. I was really excited because I thought, oh, here's a way for Brobnar to really exploit how big their creatures are. And oh, look, there's Lullup, who's 11, which, you know, previously Khalifi Dragon was 12, but that's a rare. Lullup is a common, so you have this common creature for 11 power, and if you happen to get Blood of Titans, it's at like 16. This is worth 8 amber. That's amazing. And if you can pull it off, that could be really good. In real life, this tends to be worth maybe 2 or 3 amber, and sometimes it's dead. And in any case, what you want your big Brobnar creatures, you want them to be controlling the board, not flexing and getting you amber. So I'm sure there are some games that have been won because of this card. It just turns out it hasn't been the super prominent thing that maybe we thought it could have been. That's my experience anyway. Oh, did I even say what it does? I don't even know if I did. When you play it, you choose a ready, friendly Brobnar creature, you exhaust it, and you gain amber equal to half its power, rounding down the game. One interesting note about this, if a creature is stunned, a flex can still work on it. That's my current understanding anyway, because stunning prevents you from using the creature. It doesn't prevent it from being exhausted, right? And in any case, there's nothing on the flex that even makes gaining the amber contingent on exhausting it, right? Do as much as you can says, well, hey, I picked a creature, it is ready. That's the one thing you have to pick, and a stunned creature can be ready. I exhausted and I gain amber, so that's pretty interesting. Okay, the War Chest is an item. It's an artifact. When it exhausts, you gain 1 amber for each enemy creature that was destroyed in a fight this turn. Common error here is thinking that this card is like you use it and then for the rest of the turn you gain 1. People do that. In a strict tournament scenario, I guess that would really sink them, because they couldn't, if they used it at the beginning, they couldn't then get the amber at the end of the turn if they were taking a fighty turn. In local play, I just say, hey, well, sometimes I won't even mention it, but with people that I know would care, I'll say, hey, that card actually you want to use at the end of your turn. And so with people who do care and want to do it right, what they've started doing is if they have it on the board as they're doing fights, they'll pile up amber on the war chest to keep track of it, and then when they use it, they take that into their pool. I don't know from like a tournament perspective how allowable doing it that way is, but it makes a lot of sense. So I'm always happy to see people do it. It makes us less likely to forget and make a mistake. Okay. Is this? Yes, we're finally into rares, and we will start off with Barehanded. Barehanded is an action, gives you a bonus amber. You put each artifact on top of its owner's deck. The active player decides in what order. that's returning. Again, 60% of the cards in rare are back from Coda. Only 40% of the cards in rare are new, versus 75% of the cards in common were new. This is a new one, Bellowing Patriot A. It's a 7-power giant, and while it's ready, each creature takes 1 damage after it enters play. That means effectively on your opponent's turn, unless they have a way to exhaust it, they're going to be taking that damage when their creatures enter. And on your turns, if you take a Brobnar turn, you can like fight or reap with this thing and then do whatever you want. But on your other turns, you're probably having your creatures take damage as they enter play. So it ends up being really similar to an autocannon in that sense. But you have a little more control, which I think is more interesting than autocannon. So I like it. Bilgam Avalanche is a 5-power giant that's back from Coda. And it says after you forge a key, deal 2 damage to each enemy creature. Right? This is back? I think this is back. I love it. I love Bilgam Avalanche. It's a super fun card. That's all. After you forge a key, deal 2 damage to each enemy creature. Very nice. Champion's Challenge is returning from Coda. It's an action. When you play it, you destroy each enemy creature except the most powerful enemy creature. Then you destroy each friendly creature except the most powerful friendly creature. So now you're left with the most powerful creature from each side. Then you ready and fight with your remaining creature. Depending on the situation, you can do some really cool math to work this out, right? I mean, let's say you had a bunch of ready Brobnar creatures. One option would be just reap with them all and then play this. Another option would be to use some of them to be able to select which of your opponent's creatures is going to be left over, right? If you don't like their strongest creature, you might throw a couple of your creatures into it to kill it so that the creature that does get left on the board is the one you want. So it just depends. Sometimes that's the right play. Yeah, anyway, and it's a very nice board clear in Brobnar. Very nice way to deal with those pesky elusive creatures. Just get rid of them all. It's great. Cybergiant Rig is new. It's an upgrade. It has a bonus amber, and it gives the creature, at the end of your turn, this creature loses a +1 power counter. When you play it, you fully heal the creature that it's attached to, and you give it a +1 power counter for each damage healed. So that's pretty cool. It gives you an incentive to use a creature to do some fighting, but not push it all the way to the point where it's destroyed, and then do this to it. Important thing people often forget is that you can attach upgrades to something in a different house. So, obviously there are a lot of Brobnar creatures where this would make a lot of sense, but I'm imagining attaching this to like an Anguish or something like that. That would be really crazy. Or what else? Like, okay, I'm not sure what else, but I think there's some pretty cool places you could go with it, just depending on the situation. Okay. Next is Forge Master Og. This is a really interesting one that can be quite painful to face if you're not thinking about it. Forge Master Og is a 4-power giant that says after a player forges a key, they lose all of their remaining amber. That applies to either player. Yeah, that's crazy. So it really punishes the overprinting. So I like it. I think it's really solid in Brobnar. Rumpus Tamer is a 4-power giant that after it reaps has you search your deck and discard pile for a War Grumpus, reveal it and add it to your hand, then shuffle your deck. War Grumpus is a rare in its own right, but if you get a Grumpus Tamer, you're guaranteed to get at least one more Grumpus. I think maybe two. I've seen a bunch that have two. Right, War Grumpus? Yeah, it's here. So actually, I'll just bring that over right now. War Grumpus is a 3-power beast that says that after fighting or reaping, has you ready and fight with a neighboring giant. That's a kind of a pretty big restriction that it needs to be next to a giant for that to really do anything. But it can be quite good. Yeah, I haven't ended up really excited about this. Also, the art is so confusing. He has 3 Grumpuses there, but like, I think because of whatever this yellow thing is, it looks like that's his head leaning forward. It's weird. Everything looks a little off. But I think he does have 3 different Grumpuses here that he has tamed and is bringing with him into battle, apparently. Here's the aforementioned Iron Obelisk. It is an artifact. It's a location, and your opponent's keys cost +1 for each friendly damaged Brobnar creature. Again, I don't love this because the ceiling on it is like 11. The ceiling on Grunt Buggy is higher because you can have a ton of big Brobnar creatures. You can have big creatures in other houses. And if you have something crazy like a Panpaca-Anga, am I getting that right? You can have like a lot of 5-power creatures. So I much prefer Grunt Buggy over Iron Obelisk, but it can be okay. I just King of the Crag is back. It's a 7-power giant that gives each enemy Brobnar creature -2 power. This is solid Brobnar hate. I think I love this card because in Keyforge there are definitely like house hate cards that punish your opponent for having a particular other house. This might be the only one that like just really punishes them for having the same house as you. Like, oh, you have Brobnar, you have big creatures? No, you don't. And unfortunately, there's no Earthshaker in this set. In Coda, one of my favorite things is the like King of the Crag Earthshaker. Yeah, all your 5-power creatures just became power 3, and now they're destroyed. Really bonkers. Anyway, but it's really good here too. Yeah, I don't know. This is great. This is a good Drummernaut hate because remember we talked about how Drummernaut benefits a lot from being power 6. Drop it to power 4. It's not so good. Anyway, yeah, I love it. That's King of the Crag. Lava Ball is back. It's an action that deals 4 damage to a creature with 2 splash. That's pretty powerful. I wish it had a bonus amber, but it does work, so can't complain about that. Might Makes Right. This is an interesting one that I think has a lot of potential to win games, but I haven't seen it be as, we haven't had games like, oh yeah, there's that Vault Tour that person won because they had a Might Makes Right. I haven't seen that, but I feel like there's a lot of potential for it to, in the right setup, to just be very game winning. So it's an action with a bonus amber, and it says you may sacrifice any number of creatures with total power of 25 or more. If you do, forge a key at no cost. If you happen to get this in a deck with like a Panpaca-Anga that's boosting the power of your creatures, that makes it extra powerful. If you have other effects that are boosting creature power, just solid. But if you just have a bunch of big creatures, I mean, you're getting value out of them, and then pow, you win with this. You almost really want to wait to win with this because it's a big tempo hit to lose 25 power worth of creatures. That can be a big tempo hit, and you do get the amber for it. But if at that point your opponent has some way to start to come back, that would be a little scary. But as a way to forge your 3rd key, maybe even like your 2nd and your 3rd key, if you have an Nepenthe Seed or something like that. Oh, that would be the best. I would love to have a Might Makes Right with some solid Brobnar creatures Panpaka Anga or 2 and Nepenthe. That'd just be amazing. Mugwump is new. It's a 6-power giant. Is it new? Oh, I can't even remember anymore. I can never remember. All right. Well, anyway, it's a 6-power giant, and after an enemy creature is destroyed fighting it, that doesn't it doesn't matter whether you Mugwump was initiating the fight or the other creature was. After an enemy creature is destroyed fighting Mugwump, fully heal Mugwump and give it a +1 power counter. That's pretty solid. You need a way to make sure it'll live, that it'll live through, especially that first fight. If my opponent drops one of these on the board, I am typically pretty motivated to find a way to kill it fast. But yeah, that has a lot of interesting potential. At the end of the day, you're still talking about one big creature that heals itself, and I'm not sure that really converts into a win. So, but it is very interesting. It is good for board control. I'm not, this isn't I think for that reason this isn't a card that a lot of people chase, because that doesn't necessarily convert to a win. Phoenix Heart is an upgrade that gives a creature destroyed, return this creature to its owner's hand, and deal 3 damage to each creature in play. Pretty cool. You have to be careful with this. If you have board control and you put this on a creature of your own, and then it gets killed, you can do a lot of damage to yourself. So you have to be careful about that. Pile of Skulls is an artifact. It's a location, and each time an enemy creature is destroyed during your turn, a friendly creature captures 1 amber. That's pretty cool. That's an interesting effect. Again, it's a way to turn board control into amber control. Rock Hurling Giant is a super fun card. This is one of my favorite Brobnar cards. I have a lot of favorite Brobnar cards, though. I enjoy Brobnar. I love them. So anyway, Rock Hurling Giant is a 6-power giant. And during your turn, each time you discard a Brobnar card from your hand, you can deal 4 damage to a creature. I don't yet have this in a deck with Yerk. I would love to. I would love that, because that would be so fun to get more value out of it. I did open a deck with this, and it turns out Rock Hurling Giant is a good way to deal with Brand. It's a good way to deal with a lot of things. So super fun. Shard of Strength is the Brobnar Shard, and it's an item in Shard. It's an artifact. When it exhausts, you give a friendly creature a +1 power counter for each friendly shard. So that means if you have 3 shards on the board, you're boosting a creature by 3 power. Now, what creature are you boosting? Maybe a Grok, something like that. If you have this in a deck with Might Makes Right, that could have a lot of strong potential. So, I don't know, your mileage may vary. It's definitely, in my opinion, not the strongest of the shards, but it is a really interesting effect, and given the right other tools to work with, it could be quite good. Signal Fire is a new artifact with a bonus amber. It's an item, and it has Omni. You sacrifice it, and for the remainder of the turn, friendly Brobnar creatures may fight as though they belong to the active house. So this is kind of like your Sigil of Brotherhood for Brobnar, but it's fight only. And yeah, it's an interesting card. Common thing people get confused about with cards like this is they might think, oh hey, and then if I can't fight, then I can reap, and no, because it's not a Brobnar turn, so you can't use your Brobnar creatures. Signal Fire overrides that and specifically allows you to fight with them, but it doesn't allow you to use them just generally. It only allows you to use them to fight. Last 2 cards are back from Coda. We have Take That Smarty Pants, which is an action. Thankfully, it has a bonus amber, and when you play it, you steal 2 amber if your opponent has 3 or more Logos cards in play. If you pull that off, that's great, but it's often a dead card. It's also the name of my channel because I love Brobnar And I think probably I as a person align a lot more with logos than with Brobnar. But this card sort of represents my Brobnar self, pantsing my, or giving a wedgie to my logo side, being like, hey, take that. Last one we have here is Tireless Crocag. It's a 7-power giant that can't reap, no matter what, but you can use it as if it belonged to the active house. So yeah, it does work. It blows stuff up. But if your opponent has no creatures in play, you destroy it. That is one of the most missed triggers in all of Keyforge, I think, because it's on a rare, and it's the only card that has that trigger, and it's very easy to miss. So be careful about that one. Yeah, Tireless Crocag is fun. It's fun. It's nice. All right, that is it. I've been enjoying the new Brobnar. I've been really enjoying it in AOA. It's different. It feels different from Coda. But out of all the houses, it might be, well, what did they add? Grunt Buggy really is huge, and so when I get a Brobnar deck that has Grunt Buggy, I'm really excited to play it. When I open up Brobnar decks that don't have Grunt Buggy, they feel a little more similar to Coda. I look for cards like the Bingo Bang Bang or things like that to really spice it up, give more options. Drum or Not really changes the game. Yeah, they've done some interesting things. I do think Brobnar in this set is probably a bit better than in Coda, but they're both fun. Brobnar to me just one of the more fun houses to play. So I hope you'll get out there, play some. I know not everybody loves them. That's fine. You do you. But I love me some Brobnar, and I hope you enjoyed this video, and that you'll join me. The last one that I have for AOA is going to be looking over House Deeth, which is a quite good house in AOA. And then I'll have more stuff coming up. I have all these decks to open, along with Store Champs should be coming up pretty soon. I'm thinking about the Vault Tour in Vegas, but not totally decided yet. And would love to do it. Maybe take my daughter to this one, but not for sure yet. And then at some point we got to start digging into these Worlds Collide spoilers, and there's just so many of them. It's kind of ridiculous. So anyway, that's that. Thanks so much. I hope you enjoyed it, and that you'll join me next time. Until then, forge some keys.